All right, welcome to the session on Firebase. Quick question, are you guys enjoying DevTalks so far? Okay, I think we can do better than that, right? It's like, are you in food coma or no caffeine in your system or something like that? Let's do this again. Are you guys having fun so far? No. It's a tough crowd. Okay, let's try this once more. Are you guys having fun? What's wrong with you guys? All right, quick show of hands. How many of you have used or heard of Firebase? Okay, very good. Very few. So for those of you who have heard or used about Firebase, I hope to teach you a thing or two because we only have, 15, 20 minutes. But for those of you who have never heard of it, I'm going to try and blow your mind. Okay. Let's see. Let's hope. Yeah. All right. Last month I was at Google I/O, the annual conference in Mountain View, in the U.S., and it was one of the fantastic experiences of my life. It was just a mind-blowing conference, and Firebase was featured in a very big way. Google announced a host of new suite of products and updates to Firebase. Unfortunately, we won't have time to go over all of the gory details of Firebase, but I'm hoping to give you a basic overview of Firebase so that you can get started for your prototyping or validating your product ideas or anything of that sort. But before we dig into Firebase, one thing that we should all be excited about as technologists living in this day and age is that a concept of exponential technology, right? So, for instance, a man in Southern Africa, I actually come from South Africa, a man just like me in rural parts of Africa, the videos that you see. When he answers his smartphone, he's actually using a device that's 1,000 times faster and 1,000,000 times cheaper than the supercomputers of 1970s. Right? So that's the power of exponential technology. So it's any technology that even it's at nascent stage, given the amount of time, it doubles in power on a regular basis, and it makes a huge difference. So for example, a nascent technology at this time, in 10 years' time, it'll be 1,000 times more powerful. And in 20 years' time, it'll be 1,000,000 times more powerful. Think about AI, for example. 10 years ago, in 2006, do you have any idea of what AI and machine learning looked like? Do you know of any product or something that you remember? It was 2006, a year before Apple released its iPhone. I can't think of any. But nowadays, every single smartphone is powered by an AI-powered assistant, like Siri for the iPhone, Google Assistant. And now we are also having products for the home that makes it AI-powered, like Amazon released Amazon Echo, I think, and then Google released Home, and so on and so forth. So AI is, I can safely say, that's like 1,000 times better than what it was 10 years ago. And it's going to be 1,000,000 times better in 10 years' time. And I can't imagine what that would look like. But why am I talking about exponential technology? Because one of the building blocks of technology is computing, and more recently is cloud computing. And cloud computing and computing in general are enablers to exponential technology, and they themselves are on an exponential growth curve. And Firebase is one of those enablers to put your technology or put your ideas on an exponential growth curve. So that's why I'm going to be talking about Firebase. So what is Firebase? Firebase is a suite of products designed to help you develop your apps, grow your user base, and earn money. What does that actually mean? So this is an infographic given by Google. So you have different suite of products for developing your apps, trying to see how you can grow your user base and then earn money. As I said, we won't have time to go over all of these. I encourage you to, after this talk, come talk to me or go over to firebase.com and explore all of these things. But what I'm going to focus on today are these things. One is the real-time database. The offline support that the real-time database provides user authentication, and static hosting. So let's look at what Firebase Database is all about. Firebase Database is a NoSQL document database. So the data is actually stored in JSON. It's one big blob of JSON. And JSON, as you know, is hierarchical structure. So you can access data at every single node or every single subtree using a URL. So REST API is supported out of the box. And the most killer feature of Firebase is that it's got real-time synchronization. What that means is that, let's say you have 100 different clients connected to Firebase. One of the clients sends data to Firebase. Firebase updates itself, and then it knows that there are 99 other clients, and it's going to send real-time updates to all of those connected clients. Not only that, let's say one of those clients get disconnected, so you don't have to have the app stop working when it goes into an offline mode. Firebase SDK allows you to store the data locally, and when the connectivity comes back up, so those delta changes are sent back to Firebase. Firebase updates itself, and the whole cycle continues, and then real-time updates are sent to all of the connected clients. So this is how it works. So whether it's iOS or Android or web, when a device goes offline, the SDK has mechanisms to do caching, threading, to figure out if you're online or offline, and then it starts storing data locally. And when the connectivity comes back up, then it syncs back up to Firebase and all of the other clients. Another feature of Firebase is that you can connect your client directly to Firebase. So what that means is that imagine developing an app. So you think about your users, the tasks that they're doing, and the data you want to store. So then you come up with a data model, you create your database, and then you create an application layer to expose that data, and then you start coding your UI to access the data through that API. You don't have to do any of that with Firebase. Firebase, as I said, allows you to use REST API or all of the native, as Paul was referring to native. I hope he's here and listening to me. So you have native SDKs to connect directly to Firebase, and as well as web SDK. But if you really want to use it in this manner, where you have an application level layer, of course there are many libraries and REST API, obviously, that you can connect your application logic to Firebase. Okay. So that's countdown. So I have 12 minutes left. I want to show you a demo. So what I'm going to show you is a group chat app that I'm going to build from almost scratch. We don't have much time to build it from scratch. What I have is a shell, and then I'm going to start building. So what we'll do is I'll show you the JavaScript SDK, and then we'll come back to how you can get started with Firebase with iOS and Android. Since my extension is not working, so I need to just get this right. I can only see my screen on that second screen. Okay. Okay. All right, so what I have here is a shell. Okay, so it's just, let me just open up the developer tools here. I want to create a massively multi-user group chat app where you can all log in and start chatting with each other. But I also want to know who is sending what messages. So what I'm going to do is show you how Firebase allows you to authenticate your users, and then I'll show you how you can store data in Firebase. Normally I would do it the other way around, but because of the interest of time, I'm going to start with authenticating your users and then store data. So currently it's just a shell, nothing's actually working. I have a logout here. I want to show the image of the person who was logged in using OAuth. Just one thing to mention regarding authentication. Firebase, out of the box, supports OAuth authentication for Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and anonymous authentication or email and password. So all that with like a few lines of code. All right, so now this is all HTML. It took me like 15 minutes to get this up and running with Bootstrap and everything. But now what I'm going to do is, okay, let's see. Okay, so this is my app.js. All right. So the first thing you need to do in order to get started with Firebase is you initialize. So you have your config with your API key and database URL. It's pretty similar to iOS and Android SDK. So you have your database URL. What that database URL is that it points to the root of the database. So remember I told you it's a JSON database hierarchy. The root of the database is that database URL, and then you initialize with that. Next thing is to get two different handles, one to the database, one to the authentication kind of functionality. How you do that is this. So remember, I'm kind of cheating with because of the time. I have all these snippets. So, but I hope it's simple enough for you to understand. So you have a reference to the database, and then you have a reference to the authentication functionality. Okay. Once you have that, I'm going to implement login. So I want to create a login using Facebook. So this is how you log in with Firebase. All right. So you get the provider, and then you say sign in with pop-up. So that's about it. You get OAuth authentication with Facebook or Google or all of the providers that Firebase support with just these two lines of code. And logout is like this. So you have login and logout. And what I also want to do is, based on whether the user has logged in or logged out, I want to react to that kind of event. So that's where this authentication handler comes in. So authentication handler has a callback functionality that gets called every time a user state changes, whether the user is logged in or logged out or expired or whatever. That callback will get called, and you can react to that. So this is how you do that. Okay. So what I'm doing is just simple show and hide, show the button, show the text box, and so on and so forth. As soon as the user gets logged out, this function gets called, and you can react to that. All right? So that's login, logout. So let's see what we have here. So I've already logged in, so I'm going to just log out. So when you log out, you see the login button, and you don't see the text box where you can type your message. And when you log in, it does the pop-up. You can also use redirects. All of that is built into the SDK. It gets your photo and then displays it, and then it hides and shows. Now, that's as simple as that. So you have user session management with just how many lines of code? 30 lines of code, you have user session management up and running. Nothing, no rocket science here, right? Now, next I want to start storing the messages that are coming through. For that, just remember that it's a JSON hierarchical database. Now I'm going to show you how you can add messages to the database. Can people see at the back? Okay. So what that does is that, so the reference to the database and child. So the reference is the root, and the child is messages. So messages, I want to start a subtree, and I want to store all of the messages that are sent to the group chat app underneath there. So I just push with the username and the message that they're sending. Now it's going to store this data in the database, but I also want to update the UI. So what I'm going to do is just simple JavaScript, yeah. So I'm going to update the UI. But the interesting function here is that this ref child message is on. So just like you can attach listeners to a button change event, in Firebase you can actually attach an event to the internet, attach a listener to the internet. So what that means is that at that particular given subtree, like messages, whenever a child gets added, then call this message. So it not just happens in this particular client. Any client that you implement this callback functionality, your mobile app or web app, this gets called, and you can react to that. So this child added event is a predefined event. You have child removed and updated and so on and so forth. So let's see what this does. So now I have 50 lines of code. Do you think we have group chat app? Let's check it out. Okay. DevTalks. All right, so I can see something on the front end, but what is it doing in the background? So here's the console that I want to just show you. So when you log into Firebase, this is what you see, right? And then you can see all of the different feature set that I showed you in the infographic for developing your app, growing your user base, and earning money. As I was talking about Firebase Database, and here's the database. So here's your JSON object, and then here are the messages. As and when I type in the message, so let's say, very quiet here. Okay. Okay, so the database is already stored in the cloud, right? So now if I want to open up another client and then, so I'm simulating another client. So I'm going to update this particular web page with another message. And you can see it's going to update the database as well as the other client here. So it's sending real-time updates to all of the connected clients. And the second thing I want to show is that let's say you go offline, right? Disconnect. Okay, this is an offline message. Okay, so the client keeps responsive and is continuing to work. But if you can see here, there is no message here because Firebase knows all of the connected clients, but it's not connected at the moment. So it is not seeing the message. But as soon as I come on, okay, so this is an offline message. So as I was saying earlier, the offline, the SDK keeps track of whether the client is on and off, and then gets the updates as and when things change. So is this cool or what? It seems very, every time I show this feature, people start clapping, but I guess you guys are not really. Okay, so I hope you are impressed. And then let me just continue with the demo of the interface itself. As I was showing you, there's authentication, so the different sign-in methods that you can use. So you can enable Google, Facebook, Twitter, or GitHub, or email and password. If you use email and password, then you can set up what email gets sent when you sign up, what emails do you want to send during password reset, and so on and so forth. And then the last thing I want to show you before I end this particular demo is deployment. So if you have npm package installed for Firebase, all you have to do is Firebase deploy on your folder, and it gets deployed. And you can create custom domain for free. So if you have a custom domain, you can have your app up and running on the cloud and sharing it with everybody for free. And so let's look. I've already deployed this. As you can see, it also keeps track of it. So if you click on that link, then you have that. You can pretty much, all of you can go in there and start chatting away, and we will know who is saying mean things about me. So, all right, so that's the demo. But what I want to also share with you is the, let me just extend again. The way you can get started with Firebase for your iOS and Android apps. Okay, it's very simple, as simple as 1, 2, 3. The first thing you do is provide details of your application to the Firebase console, and it gives you a JSON file for configuration that you can add to your Android Studio project. And then so just like this, you just drag and drop, and then you just update your Gradle file for your module as well as your project, and then you have Firebase support for your Android app. It's pretty much exactly the same with the iOS app, but with the iOS app, you get a plist file that you include into your Xcode project. But the one extra step that you have to do for iOS is that you need to use pod. How many of you have used pod? Okay, a few of you have used pod. What pod does is that it manages all of the Google services dependencies. So you would say pod init, and it'll create a pod file, and then you include the Firebase dependency, and then you do pod install. It'll get all of the Firebase dependencies and also create an X workspace file that you will start using from then on. And that's how you get iOS support for Firebase. The one last thing that you have to do with iOS app is call this function called Fire app configure inside the did finish launching with the options function. Once you have that, then you have Firebase. So Firebase client, iOS, Android, and web, connect directly to Firebase database, real-time updates offline by out of the box, authentication with OAuth. These are some of the features of Firebase. I hope you enjoyed it. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Okay, thank you for your talk. What is the disadvantage of Firebase?
Well, the one thing that I know is that the big bangs don't like it. So one of the things that I've spoken this to the Google engineers when I was up at Google I/O is that you can't choose where the data resides. Because of the nature of real-time database, Google decides where the data is distributed, so real-time updates can be sent appropriately to all of the clients. But with banks, you generally want to know, where is my data sitting? So I don't want this data to be sitting in Romania. I want it to be somewhere else. So that's one of the drawbacks of using. But also, I think for prototyping and validating product ideas, Firebase is a very good option to start off with. So just get it out of the way, because you don't have overhead in setting up servers and so on and so forth. So you can test your product ideas as soon as possible without spending too much money or time.
Yeah, privacy is a big thing as well. So you don't own the data, Google owns it. So. Yeah. Any other question?
Yeah.
Can you please tell me how it solves the concurrency when it updates?
Okay. So I mean, it's a long discussion, but what the SDK itself does. So first of all, the server maintains all of the connected clients using WebSockets. So when a connection is lost, so then the WebSocket reference on the server is lost, right? So, and then when the connection comes back up, then the SDK is constantly wanting to connect to the server. And when the SDK connects to the server, then it sends the delta back to the server. And then depending on what state the database is in, so it's got logic to make sure that the caching, collision, and everything is taken care of. If it can't, then it won't update. Yeah. Because sometimes the client could be disconnected for 2 weeks and the data is stale, in which case, if there's a conflict like that, it will not update. Yeah.
Any other question? Do they have a commercial license now on Firebase, or is it free to use?
It's free to start, it's free to use. There are certain features that you need to start paying. It's, I think, Blaze plan, as they call it. It's just not expensive. It's just, but that's not. But you can get started with your application with Firebase. You can even have your custom domain, and you can host your web application.
Yeah, I think in terms of more of SLAs and the fact that if you pay for something, you have this guaranteed service.
Exactly.
Cool. Any other question?
Hi, can we integrate it with Java or only with JavaScript?
So they have 3 SDKs at the moment. That's native, like the JavaScript SDK, the iOS SDK, and the Android SDK, which is Android SDK is Java. But there are server-side SDKs for Java as well, because it is pretty much REST API. So if you can talk REST, then you can talk to it. So Java libraries that talk REST, you can integrate with Firebase.
Okay, so we can deploy an application on a JBoss server and connect to the Firebase?
Correct, exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm going to keep it here. We have a panel. Oh, there's one more. Okay, let's go for it.
So my question is, does the JavaScript support include Internet Explorer 8, or is it because it uses WebSockets, there's no chance for that?
I actually haven't. Who uses Internet Explorer 8 anymore? Well, I worked with a client recently, and they're saying they don't support. It's just a website, and they don't support anything less than IE 11. And even on IE11, the stuff break. So I actually don't know the official answer to that question. I'll have to check and get back to you on that.
It might be that you need to do some sort of polling from the clients all the time, rather than having things sent over via WebSocket.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So next here in a couple of minutes, we have a panel on IoT in the context of mobile.
Great. Thank you
I'll see
so
in a bit.
much.
Thank you.